Well, happy Sunday, everybody. Happy third Sunday in October, and welcome to another one of our live stream chats. Today we're going to be addressing the topic of placing your images for good composition. That is a universal topic. It applies to so many fields, not just visual art and painting, but photography, floral arrangement, architectural design, all kinds of things. So that's what we were addressing, and for those of you who are new, who've not joined us before, I want to give you just a little bit of a rundown how this works. We welcome everybody to join and learn, and we have a group of people who are channel members called Studio Insiders, and who pay a little tiny monthly fee, $4.99 a month, to be members, and a part of their reward for being a member is to be able to ask the questions during these live chats. But we have other perks too, and that is that once a month, all of our channel members, called Studio Insiders, receive a free video lesson. And once a month you receive a free little snippet from one of our videos. And then in addition to that, you are allowed to ask questions during these live chats. So yeah, you can click that join button you see there on your screen and become one of these members and have fun with the rest of us. So I'm seeing that some of the members are popping in now saying hello, and I'm glad to see you all. Yeah, so it looks like we're just about ready to go. So Roger, do I need to remind them of anything else? Have I pretty much covered it?
No.
Okay, we're good to go. So shall we give time for a few more folks to come in before we start the...
Okay, you want to tell them exactly what we're doing today?
Yeah, exactly what we're doing today. Well, I told them our topic is placing the images for good composition. So the way this works is I always create a little video for you to watch first. This is only about 14 minutes long. And what it does, in this one, I go through the traditional methods of placing images and show you sort of how that works. And then I take a photographic image and I play around with it a little bit based on these methods. And so this is to help stimulate your questions. So while you're watching the video, if you have questions, go ahead and, our studio members, go ahead and ask those questions. And then at the end of the video, we answer the questions and we start a discussion. Try to address everything that you have on your mind and solve all your compositional problems. Not really, but at least we get you going in the right direction. So with that having been said, looks like we've got a number of people coming on now, and that's really, really good to see. Most of new faces, not old faces, what we should say, our traditional crowd, I don't know. And everybody, welcome. So let's get started, and Roger, if you're ready, let's key up that video and get it going, and then I'll talk to you on the other side. Whether you're painting still life or water, whether you're doing a portrait, whether you're painting in plein air or from imagination, how you place those images is going to be a large, large percentage of the success of your painting. And that's because we painters are dealing with space. Space that's located within the boundaries of our painting surface. No matter the shape, no matter the orientation, no matter the size, we place our images within those boundaries, going to determine how the viewer perceives the painting, but more important, it's going to determine how we express the images we're working with. We have traditional guides that we can use for placing those images. One that we're all familiar with is the rule of thirds. We can use the rule of thirds for aligning images according to where the divisions of the thirds appear horizontally and vertically. And what we call the sweet spots, these little areas around the intersection that have proven to be good places for our centers of interest, or as a lot of people like to call the focal point. The rule of thirds is only one guide we can use. Another one that I enjoy using is the corner to corner. From the center of the intersection to each corner, right between those are the little sweet spots I was talking about, located in about the same area as the intersections of the rule of thirds. And we find them in all these areas. Very easy to find when we can use the corner to corner for aligning our movement as well. But that's not the only, those two are not the only ones available to us. We also have a placement guide that a lot of master artists use very intelligently called the rebattement. A rebattement simply organizes the rectangle into its natural square and the rectangle that's left over from the square. Any shaped rectangle will include at least two squares, one on either side. On this one, the square on the left, and here the square on the right. I'll go into this a little bit more later on about how we can use the rebattement for placement of our images. But these three methods, all three of these are traditional, easy to use, and proven for our placing of our images. There is one more, but it's much more complicated, but I do want to show it to you to make you aware of it in case you're interested in pursuing it. And that is the dynamic symmetry grid. Dynamic symmetry is a study of dividing space or placing images that has to do with mathematics, and it goes back a long time, perhaps as far as the Greeks, but it's very complicated, as you can see, and there are many ways the space can be broken up. This is just one example. So if you want to pursue dynamic symmetry, if working with mathematics is of interest to you, feel free to do so, but I'm not going to use that in this placement of images because it is so complex. That's a study within itself. But I want to use this reference. This is this photo. Play around with the images a little bit and show you how you can get a handle on placing your images, or at least begin a discussion about it. So let's look first of all at why this is not the ideal placement of images. The way the photograph is shot, it's really very, very dull placement. Let's begin by using our diagrams to explain that. So the first I want to put up is the rule of thirds. Now, look at what's going on there. The building, it would be the center of interest, located right in the center of the composition. Probably the least exciting place to put an image like that. Now, I do want to give a little bit of a sidebar here. There is something called formal balance, the kind that Leonardo used in The Last Supper, where the Christ figure is placed in the center, right in the center of the composition. But that requires that mirror images, sort of mirror placement of the images, should go on both sides in order for it to work. But that's not what we're working with here. We're working with the informal balance, which is a whole different field. So, two things we know. One, the center of interest placed in the center of the composition is going to be dull unless you've got some ingenious way of calling attention away from the fact that it's in the center. Two, the sizes of the spaces between edges should always vary. The size should vary in order that there be more dynamics. It's sort of an expansion-contraction idea. So you see the edge here, another reason this one is really, really a dull composition. Edge of the building against the edge of the rectangle or the surface. Look at the size of that. Now compare size of the top of the building to the top, about the same size. Size of the bottom of the building to the edge, bottom edge, very much in the same size range. The perception of the edge of the building here on this side, though it's not quite so bad because we really see this tree overlapping. Nevertheless, with this size varied, that could be a much more dynamic placement of images. Now, I want to play with this just a little bit and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to leave the rule of thirds up, but then I'll also show you how the others work with this. I want to take away the building, and now we just have the landscape. Now, let's put the building back in, but let's play with it. Two things we need to happen. We need those spaces between edges to be different sizes. We need to locate the building in a place other than the center. Well, why don't we position ourselves further back from the building? Of course, that would change the trees. But when we're using a photograph, we can rearrange the images, and as long as they make sense, it doesn't matter how you rearrange them. So suppose I reduce the size of that photo, or you reduce the size of the building, and let's bring it, well, we can say, we will not belong logically where the sweet spot is here. Here we could have it sitting in the road if a tornado had just come by, but that wouldn't be good luck. So, but what about here? You see, even that little bit of change, what does that do to the space? What does that do to the total arrangement of the thing? Well, for one thing, we now have variation in sizes from the edge here to the edge there. You see, that's a longer size than edge here to edge here, edge here to edge here. These are sort of similar. Well, we could even change that. We can either bring it over, push it behind those bushes or behind those trees just a little bit more, or we could bring it down. What if we just bring it over? And there we go. Let's try that. Now, all right, it's in the vicinity still of the sweet spot. It's good placement of it. We have now a longer space between the edges here, as compared to the edges here and here and here. Have a variation in space. That little arrangement actually works. And looking at it now without the grid, we have a better feeling about it. It's no longer in the center, shifted now so that we have got unequal sizes between edges. Well, let's try the corner to corner diagram over this. We see we have the same thing. We have the building, the center of interest is located in the sweet spot area. And we can feel where the center is, which gives us a better feeling of how this space gets divided. So everything seems to be working really well. Now let's see how that fits into rebattement. Does it? And if it doesn't, or can we fit it into rebattement and use rebattement? Could we have used rebattement as our guide there? Well, that actually doesn't. The rebattement in this case is probably not the best way to use that. But what I wonder is, could we use rebattement? Could we create something with this composition? Could we use these images in a way, or rearrange them in such a way that we could use rebattement as our method of placement? So what I want to do here is I'm just going to leave the rebattement diagram up, and I'm going to change. Now here's what would happen. Here's how rebattement would work. We would need an edge, this edge aligned somehow with the rebattement on this side, or on this side. Now if we put it on this side, it's not. It throws it right back in the center again. What if we even make it? What if we make it even smaller? And what if we put the rebattement? That throws it right in the edge of the road. But that's not. Oh, I see. The space between here and here is unequal. Now, those are two things I would advise when you're placing images. Those are two things you always notice. Look for centers of interest, especially not being in the center of the composition, and always look for the distance between edges to be unequal, or at least somehow divided in such a way as they're unequal. So I'm not so sure that is visually the smartest way we could arrange that and have it to be dynamic. Now, if we put the building right on the rebattement, that way, let's move it up just a little bit, that gives us almost the same kind of composition as we had earlier. So see, playing with images like this, and you can do that in your drawing if you don't have the computer software, you don't really need that. It's just a really convenient way for me to show you this. But you can do that in your drawing where you actually can change the sizes of images and you can move images around in little preliminary studies. Find that best placement of images to give you the best possible composition. I think just out of interest, and this is neither here nor there, but this is, you might call, a bonus. What I'd like to do is throw that dynamic symmetry grid on top of this and just see how it works. What I want you to notice about the dynamic symmetry grid is it is a combination of the rule of thirds. It includes the combination of the rule of thirds, you see this right here, and the corner to corner, you see here and here. And all it does there is to subdivide rule of thirds, see here and here, corner to corner of this section of rule of thirds, and subdivides this rule of thirds, corner to corner, and corner to corner here. And really, it's a very interesting, and you can be, as long as you're playful and don't get too bogged down, and it's a very interesting way to organize space where you're placing images somewhere in the vicinity of those intersections, or you're aligning movement of images with these diagonal lines themselves. But I want you to notice our little building is placed right here in this strong intersection. Not bad for a little exercise, is it? But I think here is probably a good place for us to stop and let you ask your questions. All right, waiting for you. Okay, now you've got some stimulation. It's time for your questions. Did you have any questions? Did we leave any questions unanswered? So go ahead and start those questions coming in. Any kind of question you have related to anything I brought up in there, or a question you might have related to placing images that maybe I might not have addressed, because that was, after all, just a survey video. So go ahead and ask those and we can get the discussion started. And I don't see any questions coming in. The marvelous thing about the placement, those guides that we use for placement, is that they're so universal. Because if you'll notice, if you're using a camera, and most people are these days, the chances are that you're going to have that rule of thirds diagram pop up on your camera screen for placing your images. And you find that in everything you study that has to do with designing, that these principles, one or all of them, will come up. So let's see. Kitty, welcome, Kitty. You're a new member, aren't you? What if you wanted to insert human figures into that same landscape? Best placement for them? Yeah, but well, now you would go through the same. Well, it depends on what the human figures are doing. You would, if you're going to put the human figures in a landscape, you have a reason for putting them there. We're assuming they're going to be doing something or in some way related to that landscape. So your placement of them, then, you would use the same process that I used in placing that building. You first of all try to find ways to align them in the vicinity of what we call those sweet spots. Now, if you're just new to the idea of placing, it's a good idea to just not try to make a complex issue of it, using either the rule of thirds and finding or playing with the sweet spots, or my corner to corner, which is my favorite, and just finding areas within the sweet spots, and then you adjust the size according to, remember the two things I was emphasizing there. Got to clear my throat. Here we go. two things I was emphasizing there. When you're placing, you want to try to avoid placing the images right in the center unless other things are designed so that it's going to make sense and they're going to be balanced on either side. And I can think like I used the Last Supper by Leonardo as an example of that. So, but otherwise, when you place them, you want to keep an eye on the edges of the figures, and as related to the edge of their corresponding edge on the painting. The size, you want to keep that size unequal, and but you play with it. There are no rules. You can't. Anytime you try to use a rule, you're going to stifle your creativity. So you notice that I do not like rules. I think that is becoming kind of a mantra, isn't it? Okay, S. McClear, what software? I knew that was coming up. What software did you use to edit the barn out of the picture? I use a software called ArtRage 6. Oh, actually, this is the newer version, ArtRage Vita. But go to ArtRage. No, wait a minute. I've forgotten the company name. But you can Google ArtRage and you can find that. Linda Marquez. Linda, hi Linda. I know this is not the subject, but I would like to know about your academy. Oh, what to expect and what it will entail. Okay, I'll just briefly tell you that, but don't want to get too much off topic here. Yeah, the academy is going to include self-directed courses, and you're going to be able to do the complete course online on the website. You'll be able to, it will pace you. There'll be videos in the courses. Most of the courses are built on videos that we use during our workshop sessions. So we take those videos and we turn them into self-directed courses. We'll be telling you more about that, and I'll be sending out more detailed information about that as we get closer to the launch date. Still some distance away because lots of work to do to get that ready. I'm thinking right around the first of the new year. I'm hoping that we can launch the academy and then we give everybody information about it. And I think you will like it. I think you will enjoy that method of study. Okay, let's see. Belinda, how does that play out in landscape pieces without building? Same way. You're going to have something that you are interested in the landscape. There are always images in the landscape, and so it always depends upon what's in that landscape, what kind of images are in that landscape, because it's the way you arrange those images and call attention to them that's going to either make your painting very boring or very interesting to look at. And so that's about the best way I can answer that one, Belinda. Go play with it. MD Denham, do some subjects fit better in rebattement? Yes, in a rebattement. Yes, some subjects do fit better in a rebattement, and you can see that. You can go through the works of master painters, and you can see that some of them did choose rebattement. When you have a subject where you can have some activity going on within the square, and then maybe a corresponding activity going on the rectangles, what I call kind of question and answer setup for your painting. That's a good way, a good topic or subject for using for rebattement. But there are other ways too. Sometimes one that, let's see, I was trying to think. It was actually a demonstration I did, but I can tell you what it was. There was a subject that really lent itself to rebattement for me was a shepherd herding sheep, a shepherd taking care of his sheep. And he was standing, looking at the sheep. He had this little dog there with him. In fact, I think I used that in one of the lessons online. He had his little dogs there with him too, I think. And then there were the sheep over in the field. And so it just lent itself to rebattement because I was able to put him in the rectangle of the rebattement and then carry it over and have the sheep in the landscape in the square of the rebattement. It's really a wonderful way for organizing your space, your compositional space, when you have maybe a story where there are two things going on, where there is a center of interest and then something the center of interest is interested in, or that sort of thing. So I could go on and on. We could do a whole session on remodeling, but maybe that will get you started. Cheryl, from our workshop, she was talking about our in-person workshop we had here 2 or 3 weeks ago. I find this one the most difficult aspect of balance. I can't always make it fit into the sweet spot. Can I use the overall U or C or L movement instead? Well, I think don't try to make it fit into the sweet spot. But remember, the vicinity of the sweet spot is just a wonderful location within a rectangular space. You know, keeping in mind that that space has those 4 edges, and that is what we're organizing. And so somehow, when we have that major, if it is a major center of interest, if we have it located within those sweet spot areas, it lends itself visually to being better balanced. And sometimes that can play into the movement patterns you just described. Now, the U movement, C movement, L, S, all those are movement patterns which help us to achieve balance while we're keeping in the triangle circle, you know, all those. Help us to create a visual movement while we're also balancing our painting. And so, yes, the using the sweet spot can play into that. I mean, you see how you might, if you had some sort of what could we use as a maybe an aqueduct, that sort of shape, which sort of lends itself, that is really extreme, but it sort of lends itself to a U-type movement, upside down U-type movement, that might be located so that it is, the legs of the aqueduct are like within those sweet spots, maybe shifted to the right or shifted to the left or something like that. So you don't try to aim for the sweet spot, but the vicinity of the sweet spot, and also what you do on the other side of that is going to contribute to the balance as well. So I think play with that, Cheryl. Play with that as an intention. I think it will become clear to you, and probably an exciting method of composing for good balance, as good placement gives good balance. So, okay, either I gave you a confusing answer there, or maybe stimulated you to try something. Maurice says, where does placement come in when composing a picture? Maurice, the placement is a part of the composing. The placement, the images that we're putting into the painting, we're always putting images in, and how we place those images, how they relate to each other. With when we say relate to each other, we're talking about their distance from each other, or whether they're overlapping each other, or whether they have some visual thing in common, or how they relate in the space. What distance are they from the edges, the side edges, the top edge, the bottom edge? All those kinds of things is a part of the composing process. Maybe did I clear that up? Y'all have to let me know whether I gave you clarity or confuse you, because remember, I'm reading what you say and you're listening to what I'm saying, so that sometimes it gets a bit of a disconnect. Linda, do you use No 10 for this placement? No 10 becomes a part of the placement, the image placement, Linda. Sometimes the light, depending on the light and the shadow, sometimes the light and the shadow areas, or the way the light and shadows are creating patterns, you can also use the placement, the sweet spot placement or alignment, the way you align those with some alignment in one of the guides of the diagrams. That can, what was the question? Oh yes, on No 10. Yes. The shadows and lights, the ways those shadows and lights are placed, plays a role too. So sometimes we're placing the images, but sometimes the shadows and the lights of those images may be strong enough that they become more important than the image itself. And I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't mention the patterns of shadows and light, but I was just talking about images per se. But you are I'm glad you pointed that out because sometimes the shadows can be and lights can be strong enough contrast, value contrast, that they can influence the placement very strongly. So yes, can very well be. Dennis, I like the move to the left. That would open the sky to the left. Oh, you're talking about what I did there in the in the little demo I did. Yeah, and those are the things you pay attention to. When you make images move, you place images in places other than where they are originally. You pay attention to what are you causing to happen. Are you opening up sky space? Are you and that sort of thing? So all that plays into it. It's a good point a good thing to point out. That Cheryl got it. I would definitely play with it. All right, wonderful, wonderful. And clarify sweet spot, Linda. To clarify the sweet spot would be your area of interest. Let's say it a little bit different from that. Let's say that area of interest location within the vicinity of the sweet spot helps to accent its importance and give it a, shall we say, a primary role in the composition. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Does that help clear that up, Linda? Melissa, should movement also be targeted on sweet spot and placement? I wouldn't say targeted, Melissa, but I would say considered. Because the movement, we've got all these things that go into composing images. We have and so we address them pretty much one at a time, but they work together just like ingredients in a recipe. That if you have to have everything working together in order for, if you were baking a pie, all the ingredients, the way they're balanced, are going to determine how delicious your pie turns out, or whether anybody wants to eat it. And composing paintings is pretty much the same way, with all those things working together. So movement is a part of it, and we certainly do use movement, especially in using the revetment. We certainly do use the visual movement within there. But I would say watch what the image is doing and where you're placing the image. Watch what kind of visual movement it's creating. Okay, I just need to quit saying I hope that clears it up or whatever. If ask me questions. If I create more questions than answers when I'm addressing these questions, ask me more questions and we'll see where we can go from there. Maurice says, my question was maybe not clear. I mean, where do you start when composing? Where do you start with a gesture and then maybe placing tan? Good point. Good point. You know how I love gesture. Maurice has been doing gesture drawing. She did the gesture drawing mini course, which really did wake her up to the importance of gesture drawing. And so yes, I think gesture drawing is a good way to start out. I think when you really get when you really understand gesture drawing and you really have gesture drawing working for you, gesture drawing those images also captures the movement of the images. And if you're gesture drawing your placement, then you are working the movement and the placement together. So I would say that is where you begin exploring the image. That is a good place to begin exploring that relationship and the placement of the images. I think the gesture drawing and the no-tan are two different things. It's after the placement, usually after we have decided on the placement, then we discover what's happening with the light and shadow, and that is where we start considering no-tan. Part of our new buzzword around here is workflow. That's a good one. Your sequence of working. What do you do first? What do you do second? What do you do third? Is important. Sometimes we switch a sequence around, but exploring the image first is a priority for me. And I think a priority for most people who have been painting for some time. So, okay, Belinda, sorry your answer definitely clears up my question. That pleases me. All right, Cheryl, can you have can you have something that's in your area of interest and place it not in a sweet spot or rebatment and still portray the area of interest to your viewer? Yes, indeed. Remember that there are many things that can attract interest, and how we balance things how we balance things is going to be the overall determiner of how interesting successful a painting is. Sometimes when artists really have played with the placement concept and the bounce concept long enough, pardon me, I've got frogs today. I had a big day yesterday. But anyway, when artists will often tease those sweet spots where they will make areas of interesting things happen around the sweet spots instead of on the sweet spots. Now, going back to Andrew Wyeth, sometimes he was just a daredevil when it came to placing images. Sometimes he would place images and then see what he could do with the space around the image to make it work, make it bounce in a way that worked. Sometimes he didn't do it. Sometimes it flubbed, and I'm not sure he knew it flubbed when it flubbed, or maybe he didn't care. But yes, you might go back to that. It's one of the most interestingly composed paintings that I know about, the Andrew Wyeth one of Anna and Carl, or Carl and Anna, where Carl it may be a golden rectangle, the shape of the composition, I'm not quite sure. Carl is to extreme left, Anna is to extreme right. Carl is almost, very, very close to that left and facing in that direction, which is a no-no. You don't do that. But he did it. And then he's got a rifle under his arm, and the rifle is pointed back at Anna. And so it kind of extends a visual link towards her. And then she's standing on the right looking at him. So there were lots of things going on in there that traditionally teachers might tell you never to do. He did, and he ended up with a well-balanced composition and one that had dynamic movement in it just by the way he placed those images and organized the movement within them. So go take a look at that. All right, let's see. Thank you. That answers my question. Wonderful. All right, so do we have other questions? Nobody has asked anything yet about the dynamic symmetry. Did that not interest you? I was wondering if someone was going to ask a question about that.
Math is hard.
Huh?
Math is hard.
Math is hard. Well, it's more about geometry. The dynamics of symmetry is, I should have been a little more specific and said geometry. That might have scared you away even more. We artists don't like to do stuff like that. Many artists don't. But, so if anybody have a question about the dynamic symmetry, it wouldn't displease me. I tell you what, since I don't see a new question coming up, does that mean that what's going on? Have we stalled out of questions? I do have something here I want to show you. Now, I do want, let me address the dynamic symmetry just for a moment and tell you that the diagram I showed you, the dynamic symmetry, is just one possibility for arranging shape or for placing images according to dynamic symmetry. There are many ways that a diagram or a grid is called, the dynamic symmetry grid. There are many possibilities because it's dealing with angles, relationship of angles. So if you're really, really interested in that, you might go Google dynamic symmetry grid, and you're going to find that there's some people that take that thing way to extremes. But it's not for everybody. It really, I can't work by it because I tend to be too spontaneous. But for many people, it really works very, very well. And a lot of people, not a lot, but there are those artists who are very successful working with that principle. Okay, let's see. What we have here, there's other things coming up. Took a class and they call it dynamic symmetry rebatment. And oh, I took a class they call dynamic symmetry rebatment. Any comment? Huh? Sorry about the typos. Oh, maybe the comments I just made covered that, Linda. Uh, so, okay, sorry about typos. Tell me about that. Kitty, tell me about dynamic symmetry. There's so many intersecting lines of dynamic symmetry. Where would you be placing something? Aha, Cheryl, good. I'm going to take several questions together here. So the masters may not always provide good examples. Melissa, you're right. They don't always. Sometimes the master, sometimes, we have this thing that we honor masters. Well, we do owe them some honor, but they don't always get everything right. I mean, there are many flubs in a lot of the works of the master. You got to remember that they too were working on a timeline from the time they began until they croaked. So, those who are croaked already. And in their earlier days, they didn't do so well, some of them. And yet, the greed of the marketing world grabs those earlier pieces and can take them to Sotheby's or some auction house like that and sell them for like millions of dollars, and everybody goes ooh ah ooh ah. Well, don't do that. We need to be objective about the master's works, just as we're objective about our own work. Evaluate it and evaluate it, not judge it. Evaluate it according to what is actually going on that in that canvas. Okay, about dynamic symmetry in the placement, Cheryl says that there's some intersecting lines. Okay, let me show you an example. Now, the dynamic symmetry placement, here's the way it goes. The corner-to-corner lines, the whole design of a pattern, a dynamic symmetry grid, is usually based on the corner-to-corner. They have their own names for each of these lines, and I am not going to bore you with that. I'm just going to talk in common and language that you can, easy language to understand. Corner to corner is usually where it starts because those are very dynamic lines. And we found that if you look at a lot of master paintings, the movement in the painting is more dynamic, which is what's called dynamic symmetry, when that movement is aligned with one of the corners to the opposite corners, that angle from corner to corner in either direction. So that's where it usually starts. And then a triangle is brought in, 45-degree triangle is brought in and aligned, and the grids are drawn according to some sort of pattern. Now, usually the rule of thirds will be sitting there either on top of that as an idea, or underneath that won't be visible as an idea or as a part of the rule of thirds. But the intersecting lines by corner to corner are connected some to another intersection and to some place on the edge of the triangle. So maybe a 45-degree angle, maybe a 90-degree angle, that sort of thing. Now, I'm going to show you one. I showed you one, and you saw the relationship of those lines according to the corner to corner and the rule of thirds. Botticelli, a lot of the Renaissance artists, especially a lot of the artists during that time who were doing mythological themes, where they have all kinds of angels and mythological figures and whatever, including their photographs, in their paintings, they would use a dynamic symmetry grid, which they usually created themselves, to align those images. Now, I have one here I want to show you. Botticelli, I'm using this one because it's one that most people are familiar with, The Birth of Venus by Botticelli. And I got, we always have to be a little bit mischievous, and we say lovingly call this painting Venus on the Half Shell. That neither here nor there. I'll try to get close enough to the camera. Let me just sort of stand up here, get close enough to the camera with this and show you. Now, if you can see that I've pulled, this is a different grid from the one I showed you in the video, but you can see the movement alignment, and let's see if I can do this with the pencil. You can see my pencil here. See the movement of the edges of, oops, I'm going the wrong direction. See if I can force myself to go in the other direction. Look at those movements. I can't draw backwards, and I get a backwards image here. Look at those lines of the grid, then look at how the images are aligned. The movement of those grouping of images are aligned with those major movements of the grid. You can see that. I've tried to align that grid so that you can see that clearly. And then also you see where those corner-to-corner lines cross. He's used that so that he can place the central Venus image just a little bit to the side of the intersection where she's not exactly in the center, but it's a sort of use of the formal balance idea. But you can see that he's used those lines as guides for the direction in which those images or the grouping of images are moving. So you go, you'll find, I think maybe check out Khan Academy on YouTube. They are usually really, really good about showing some good illustrations of principles that are used. But anyway, that'd be a good place for you to start. Look at some of those Renaissance paintings. The David, oh dear, what's that one called? The David painting. I can't remember. It just skips my mind. Go and look at some of the major works by Jacques-Louis David, I think 19th century French artist. And you'll see he will often use a dynamic symmetry grid for it. It's very good if you've got lots and lots and lots of images, especially if it's some sort of religious or mythological theme, but it doesn't have to be. It could be something else too. Very good for using for aligning the movement of those images and placing them in such a way that that they can have a dynamic relationship. Probably rambled on a little bit too long about that, but anyway, I made you ask, and you ask. All right. Okay. Who is it? MD Denham. Thank you for the great explanations. Could you talk about how to use sweet spot placement when using Steelyard balance? Oh, very good. Okay. We did the Steelyard thing, didn't we? In one of our chats. I don't remember. Was that a workshop? Yeah. The Steelyard balance simply means that your axis. Yeah, we did. Steelyard balance is when the axis is not in the center. Axis of the axis of the image is not in the center, but to one side or the other, and so when you're taking that axis and the balance on either side of that axis in consideration when you're placing the images. Now, a part of she was asking about the sweet spot placement. Yes. Remember, when you're in the sweet spot placement, I called your attention to using that just as a general placement, but watch the distance between the edge of the image and the edge of the canvas or the edge of the rectangle that you're working in on both sides. Because when you're oh gosh, this is hard to explain. It's hard to explain without a visual, but I'll see if I can. If your center of interest happens to also work so that a part of it becomes a part of Steelyard balance, the placement will be in that vicinity of the sweet spot, and you see the two will work together. Oftentimes we can use two principles together. That's part of how the principles will work. We use one in one way, and it also reinforces another. So I hope maybe that's a good starting place for answering that. Linda Marquez, did you say Klein? Yeah, that's my southern accent. Khan, Khan, Academy, Linda. And can you spell that website? Yeah, that you're talking about Khan. That's it. Khan, Kham, Khann, as in nice. No, find another word for that. But anyway, that tells you. Yeah, give that a Google. Cheryl, it was a wonderful example. Laughed at the Zenith on the half shell. Yeah, I always kind of enjoyed seeing that. It seems to be very appropriate for the depth of study to begin a painting in a studio, not in plein air. You're right. Well, of course, somebody would probably say, "Oh, well, we could do it in plein air," and you probably could, but I don't think it would be using the dynamic symmetry would not be the best in plein air. It would not be the best use of it in plein air. I think that would be a little bit confusing, but somebody could do it.
Did you address Dennis?
Did I address who? What?
Dennis about
Oh, Dennis. I've discovered that I have used gesture without knowing it, but without knowing what it was. Yes, isn't that interesting, Dennis? We often can use lots and lots of really effective processes without knowing what they are. So you don't have to know what it's called in order to use it well. In fact, my guess, and I think I'm right about this, is that artists before they had language were using gesture. We can look at the cave art and we can see it. They were using other things too. And I bet you that in the visual arts, most of the principles we use were discovered and then given their labels or given their names. So yes, that's the way things work. Cheryl, did I? Oh, I read that one already. Did Linda? One more question on the academy. Will the student get one-on-one guidance? In some of the courses, yes. You're talking about the coaching sessions we have. Not all it depends on which level of course you will choose in the academy. Some of them will also include scheduling a one-on-one coaching session to assess the work that you've done. And all of them will include having email support from me. Okay, at least I think that's the way it's going to work. Cheryl, let's see, didn't she ask that one? I asked that one already. Please repeat, Linda, please repeat what not to use in plein air. Linda, don't take that too seriously. We were talking about the dynamic symmetry grid would not be the best thing to use in plein air. Can you imagine using the dynamic symmetry grid and trying to arrange things in plein air painting? But by the time you got that done, the sun would be changed totally and you'd have to start all over again. So I know somebody probably pulled that off, and when they do, I'd like to know about it, but that's what I meant. Don't take that too seriously. Okay, good, glad, all right. Aha, good. Roger's given you the link to the Khan Academy, and you know that is also a wonderful organization to support financially. I think they totally function on donor support, so that would be a wonderful. But go check it out. They have some. It really is a fun little organization, and I've been supporting it for years. There you go. Okay, do we have other questions? We're going to be running short of time very soon here. So we have become saturated in brilliant understanding of placement of our images. Is that the way it goes? I wouldn't be surprised. So let me reinforce here. We have people who have joined us since we began the discussion. Let me reinforce here, just as a way of kind of wrapping things up, that to become a member, a member of our channel, Studio Insiders, all you have to do is click on the join button you see right there on your screen. You click on the join button, then you follow the instructions there. It's a $4.99 per month fee, and our reward to you for supporting us is to give you every month a free video lesson, and entitle you with the being able to ask questions during the live chat. So Linda's asking, did Roger take the photo behind you? Yeah, did you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, he did. The photo behind me is our Saltee Creek, and Linda was here a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago, was it now, that we had our live workshop here and saw some of our creeks and rivers. And that is Salty Creek behind me, and Roger took that photo. Yes. Cheryl, did you use a certain placement in the image behind you, Roger?
No, it was all intuitive.
Oh, for Roger said, no, it was all intuitive. And Roger has, as we know, a strong intuition. I want to emphasize that too, that we do have artists have a strong intuition for how placing images goes. We don't have to figure everything out intellectually. We use these principles to come behind ourselves and to fine tune what we've done intuitively. But a lot of times, just depending upon your intuition, especially after you have really studied the way these things work, the intuition is the most spontaneous tool you have, and every one of you have it. So depending on that intuition, as a first, I should say, as your first response, is really a good idea. So, okay, Dennis again. I've learned so much already. Oh, wonderful! I'm so glad to hear that, Dennis. Thanks for telling me that. And Johnny says, "Beautiful, Roger."
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to rat on you, Roger. I'm going to rat. Today is Roger's birthday. I know it's going to come in. A whole bunch of happy birthdays, and he deserves every bit of it. So, he's having to work on his birthday. Isn't that? Don't you think it should be against the law? I do. But, yeah, we had to have...
This is not the first time we've worked on my birthday.
Okay, not the first time, nor on mine. Okay, another question, Francois. I thought of the intersection lines corner to corner about this photo. Yes, indeed. Good point there. Belinda, what?
Cheryl.
Oh, Cheryl says, I thought of one of your paintings. Thank you, Cheryl. And,
Thank you.
let's see, Belinda says, where are we?
Right here.
Okay, I said thought of the intersection lines corner to corner about this photo. Hey, Roger, you scored there.
Hey.
Cool. All right, Belinda says, off topic, if time, is it a bad habit to lay a shop towel on your painting to absorb excess oil before adding? I don't believe in excess oil. Don't put that excess oil in the beginning. I don't like that idea because if you put a shop towel or anything else on paint, you're going to destroy your brush strokes, especially if you lay it on tight enough to pull up oil. I don't see any reason to do that, Belinda. I'm sorry, I got a little bit animated there, but there's certain things that we start out by not using too much oil to begin with. I very, very rarely add medium while I'm working. I know a lot of artists do, and I don't know why. Because most of most of the professional brands of paint we have these days come out of the tube already creamy enough. They're wonderful. So why add oil to it? So I don't see any reason to add extra oil. And the oil that is in the paint as it comes out of the tube does not need to be lifted up or absorbed. So I don't like that idea. I don't know where it came from, but remember I said I don't like it. And that doesn't mean you don't have to like it. Just you asked, so I said. Okay. Kitty says, beautiful photo and work great behind you, Diane. That's Roger's. He says thank you. Happy birthday. Okay, here come your happy birthdays, Roger. I hope you see them all. Woohoo, just look at that. All right.
Just so they know, I'm not in my 20s anymore.
Oh, did y'all hear that? He wanted to remind you he's not in his 20s anymore. He's only 39. Okay, nobody in my world gets old, so there you go. It doesn't matter how many years they've lived, they don't get old. We don't do that here. Okay, I check in my watch and my time and my...
You got a shout out for Bill?
A shout out for Bill.
Jenny?
Where?
Blue one?
Oh! Happy birthday to your brother Bill, too. Yes, my brother Bill has birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday to both of them. Thank you, Joni. Okay, we'll go close it down now. It looks like we're running out of time. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been fun. I hope it stimulated you to go out and do some wonderful placement of images. Don't forget your intuition. And then we look forward to seeing you on the third, here goes that frog again. We look forward to seeing you again next month, the third Sunday at 2 p.m. For another live chat. We'll be making the announcements about that. And so thanks for joining us, and bye-bye for now. And Roger's thanking you for his birthday wishes.